Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and of course that means some very smart talk radio is in your future. And this segment, I've been looking forward to this. We're going to be talking to Katie Workman. She is one of America's premier bloggers and authors about food. She's the author of the Mom 100 cookbook. She's also the founding editor-in-chief of cookstr.com. She's a regular contributor to NPR and a food writer whose articles have appeared everywhere from the Wall Street Journal to the Boston Globe, New York Magazine, et cetera, et cetera. And she has a brand new work called Dinner Solved, and we are pleased to have her here. Katie, how are you, my friend?
I am well. How are you doing?
Well, I'm good. I understand we've got some technical issues, and thank you for bearing through there, but you sound certainly good on this end. Let's do this. Give our Lewis at Large listeners, if you would, a little bit of background as how did Katie Workman get into the food business at all?
Well, I was a kid who really loved cookbooks. I read them like novels. I taught myself how to cook from them. I have no idea why I was so interested in them. I love the recipes. I love the stories. And that's how I taught myself how to cook. And I was just saying to my friend that in hindsight, the math sort of adds up pretty quickly because I realized I asked for a typewriter for my 10th birthday and a pasta machine for my 12th birthday. So looking back, the dots connect themselves a little bit.
So did you...
And then I
did you skip over the
editor when I was a graduate after I graduated college, and then one thing sort of kept leading to another.
So did you ever play with dolls, or it was just totally with cookbooks and food?
No, Barbies and cookbooks. I was definitely into a lot of the typical girl things, but dancing, Barbies, and cooking.
Well, you have two kids, and you live in the city, so I know that your life is one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the Dinner Solved. I mean, it seems maybe self-evident here, but tell us what really got you going on this. What was the idea behind it?
Well, the first book that I did 3 years ago was called the Mom 100 Cookbook, and that was 100 recipes every mom needs in her back pocket, or every dad, and it was just about solving the different dilemmas that get in the way between you and dinner. And some of the recipes had an element called the fork in the road, which means the recipes are convertible. You make a recipe up to a certain point, and then you can separate part of it out and leave it on the plainer and simpler side if you have a pickier eater, or you can make a vegetarian version and a meat version if you have people in your house who are vegetarians and meat lovers both, or you can make something a little bit spicy but leave some of it to the side for those who aren't so into spice. So the idea for this book was to create an opportunity for some stress-free meals to let the cook make one dish that would please everybody without feeling like a short-order cook.
I'm always curious is when you were putting these together, because you've dealt with food for so much and so many thousands and thousands of recipes, what is the filter, so to speak, on how you decided on these? And again, in today's world where there's a much greater emphasis on sort of local and sustainable growing and the food chain and the vegetarian element as well, it must be a little bit more taxing, a little bit more critical in some of those choices than it was maybe 20 years ago.
Well, there it is and it isn't. I mean, it's actually in a way there's more choices. So for some people that can feel a little confusing because, there's 20 different kinds of whole grains on the market, or, there's vegetables in the produce section that you might not have seen, or there's an ingredient in the recipe that you've not heard of. But I think that trying to keep the recipes, I gravitate towards comfort food. I think that I think when sometimes you'll go to a fine dining restaurant and want to be surprised or challenged, but most of the time when you're home cooking for yourself and your family, you want flavors that are just make everybody feel good, make everyone want seconds, and you can still, explore into different, cuisines and different ethnicities, and introduce things like chipotle and adobo to your chilies, or introduce sesame oil to your stir fry, but just it still falls within the realm of comfort food, and I think that no matter how adventurous or how much we know about food, we still want things that just make us feel like happily gathered around the table.
What about, I'm curious as to, drawing from your own experience with your own children and your husband, tell us a little bit about what are their favorites, and do they undoubtedly have just a little bit of influence on what maybe goes into a book?
Just a tad, for sure. As a matter of fact, this morning I was making this chocolate cupcake for AP newspapers, and they're definitely weighing in on the frosting. And but they're huge taco buffs. So that's actually what I'm making for dinner tonight is turkey tacos, which is from the first book, which is one of their all-time favorite dishes. From Dinner Solved, they love the shortcut chicken udon soup. They love the burgers, of course. They love the fried chicken. They love the simple one-skillet chicken Alfredo pasta. The Mexican tortilla soup is a huge favorite. And, of course, the chewy brownie cookies, because why wouldn't they be a huge favorite?
Well, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. We're talking to Katie Workman, a brand new work by her. Again, she is the author of the Mom 100 Cookbook and many, many other articles and blogs ranging from NPR, the Wall Street Journal, Boston Globe, et cetera, et cetera. Brand new work called Dinner Solved, 100 Ingenious Recipes that make the whole family happy, including you. And why not? Isn't that part of it? Katie, I'm just curious, have you watched, and again, I'm just going to use the nucleus of your own family, have their tastes changed over time like the rest of us? What kind of things have they sort of evolved to, or are they evolving towards?
Yeah, they definitely are always evolving, and I'm always so thrilled when something new. It's funny, I always wish my kids would like hummus, and they never liked hummus, and it's become so prevalent, and it's such a great, easy appetizer and snack, and finally that tipped over into the acceptable foods category, so I was very happy with that. They love Asian food. So another thing that just sort of became, so they've always loved the flavors of like soy and ginger and garlic, but recently I've been cooking a little bit with fish sauce, which is really available in supermarkets everywhere, which is this slightly pungent sauce, but it adds just a great note of flavor to different stir-fry dishes, and it's what makes Thai and Vietnamese food taste so good. So I've been cooking with that, and they've embraced that completely. So that's sort of how things are evolving in my house these days.
It's probably not fair, but I think probably a lot of people at first blush think, gosh, she sounds like she's cooking some wonderful things. It feels like it's going to take a lot of time I don't have because I'm racing to and from a soccer practice, et cetera, et cetera. These recipes really are designed for that busy lifestyle, are they not?
They are completely, and I am also rushing to the football scrimmages and the orthodontist and all of that. So I'm right there with you. And one thing I do at the beginning of the week is I do a little bit of chopping for 15 minutes. I take out the food processor, chop up some onions, some garlic, maybe some ginger, juice some lemons, and then you have that in the fridge all week long so that when you're grabbing a recipe and it's 5 o'clock at night, the garlic's already minced. You're halfway there.
Have you found that, are there any great differences in taste or food acceptance of new ideas from men and women? Are they different that much?
That's interesting. I think on the whole, no, I can't. I actually can't find a good generalization about that. I do think, it's slightly stereotypical, but there's absolute affinity on most men's part for meat and potatoes and some very basic, satisfying, sort of heavier foods. I think that most men really gravitate toward those, and it's a little bit of a stereotype. But I have never put down a pot roast in front of my family without them sighing with happiness and pleasure.
Okay, we're starting to transition out. Towards the cooler weather again. Why don't you pull something if you want? If you've got a favorite, maybe from Dinner Solved, what might be a great meal to have as nights start to get a little bit cooler?
Well, this is another example of the fork in the road. You can make a white bean and chicken chili, but you make the white bean chili with a bunch of vegetables, zucchini, and all sorts of onions and white beans, cannellinis. You make a very nice brothy sort of base for it. Separate part of it out, leave it as is, and then you're going to add some chicken or some chicken sausage to one of the pots, and you have the chicken white bean chili. And the other pot, you might add just some more vegetables and maybe some chickpeas, a few other vegetarian ingredients if you want. And then you have one vegetarian chili and one chicken chili, and everyone's happy, and you really only made one dish.
Katie, this is, we've talked to other authors of cookbooks before. We've never really talked that much about dessert, and it seems to me, is dessert more popular than ever, less popular, or is it changing in some way, shape, or form again over the last couple of decades? How has dessert changed?
Well, there's definitely, as of course we all know, a lot of attention and concern to childhood obesity and other and diseases and so forth built into, that are connected to being overweight. So I think people are more cautious about dessert during the weeknights at home, and sort of realizing that, a plate of sliced cantaloupe might be able to satisfy your sweet tooth better than a piece of chocolate cake every night. But when they go out, of course, people want dessert, and when you're celebrating or entertaining, people absolutely want dessert. But there's much of our world comes down to portion control, and some of us have a hard time eating one or two cookies, and so maybe it's better to have an apple and not experiment, not open the box of cookies.
What about also, let's talk a little bit about how you spend your time. Again, you're drawn a lot of places, doing lots of things. You have the opportunity to put cookbooks together and do some research there. You also have the opportunity to develop recipes. Do you like being behind the computer or behind the stove more? What do you like the best?
I love them both. It's funny. I could never, one without the other doesn't even make sense to me, but my day is spent literally running from the computer to the stove and back again for the most part. I mean, when I'm not doing media, when I'm not doing traveling, I am at the stove, at the computer, at the stove, at the computer, back, forth, back, forth. That's my day.
Well, we're very mindful that you're on a tight schedule. We do appreciate you spending some time. Before we get out of here, though, again, what I would like to do, again, I know you're in the process now of promoting Dinner Solved, but sort of what's next on your plate, so to speak? What's your next project?
Well, I'm doing a lot of writing now for different publications, from Eating Well to Cooking Light. I just have a piece out every day with Rachel Ray, and I'm writing a weekly column for AP Newspapers, which syndicates nationally. And I'm writing a column starting soon for foodnetwork.com. So I have a lot of projects that are sort of ongoing now.
But you're still going to be spending some time, I assume, in the kitchen.
Well, all of these involve developing recipes and being in the kitchen. So I will never. It will be the combination of kitchen and computer remains the same.
And a little bit of time, probably either at a dance recital or a soccer field somewhere. Probably
a little bit. Definitely time for my kids, my boys, and my husband, and my dog.
Well, again, we've been talking to Katie Workman, the author of the Mom 100 Cookbook, but most importantly for today's discussion, it's called Dinner Solved, brand new work. Katie, how can people find out more about the writing that you do and also pick up a copy of the book?
So my website is themom100.com, and that's where you can find out information about buying the book, and you can find new recipes going up every week and find out where I am.
All right. Listen, thank you so much. Good luck with the book, and would love to have you back on again.
Thank you so much.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.